Hello, welcome back to the channel. I'm just gonna scoot over a tiny bit and let the book covers shine. So let's just get right into it. The first book that I finished in May was A Reaper at the Gates by Sabaa Tahir. That is the third book in the Ember and the Ashes quartet. And in general, the thing is, my ratings don't like 1000% reflect how I feel about the series, just because I'm not a huge fan of books that like take place during like really tactical and what's the word I'm looking for, like strategic wartime endeavors. However, the action and like the characters in this book are so fun to follow because they all have a lot of heart and resilience and everything, and like the world that she has built is so interesting. Anyways, to get on with the point, I rated this book 3.75. It is YA fantasy. There is a bit of a subplot of romance. It's just like, it's a good time. It's a good time to read. I usually read it when I'm in a bit of a reading slump, when I just need to like kickstart, you know, my reading again. The audiobooks are actually really, really good. I'm in the middle of listening to the fourth one and I'm really enjoying it a lot. I think the reason why I rated this one a little bit lower is because there's a lot of wartime action going on. It's just, again, not as much my thing. I understand that once you get to like the third or fourth book in a series, it's really just going to be a lot of like fighting and strategy and all that stuff, especially when it comes to like fantasy. And that's why I think it got a slightly lower rating for me, because that part drags for me a bit, just because I'm not very interested in it. However, it's still a really good series and I highly recommend reading it. If it's like on your radar, I definitely recommend giving it a try to see if it's your cup of tea. I can't really say much else about the book because obviously it's the third in a series, so you're just gonna have to see for yourself, okay? The next book that I finished in May was Wintering by Catherine May. I think I mentioned this book other times on my channel because I have been listening to it for quite a while. I really enjoyed this book a lot. It definitely, if you're feeling like you're going through a bit of a burnout phase, it's definitely a great book. I really enjoyed listening to it. So, I mean, I mostly enjoy listening to nonfiction books or like memoirs of any kind. It kind of like gives you permission to listen to your body, listen to the fact that during winter, nature in general slows down and we are of nature. Like, we deserve to slow down in periods of our life as well, because that's the only way we can sustainably move forward in the world, because we can't just like be go, go, go all the time. It's not endless summer. We have to go through all 4 seasons, and that includes having a season of rest. And I really appreciated that, especially since I started listening to it right when I was kind of going through my little phase of burnout and like getting back on the wagon of like, took a break from YouTube, you know, all that stuff. So I definitely recommend it if that's something that resonates with you. I didn't rate it because it feels weird to rate books like that, so that one just has no rating for me. The next book is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. This was my first book by this author and I really enjoyed the writing style. I also listened to this one on audiobook and the audiobook narrator did a really good job. I thought that the like world was very interesting. It doesn't even say horror as one of the tags. I'm looking at my story graph right now. It basically follows a young woman living in this small town, and it's kind of just her getting acquainted with the house and its owner, and then I would say chaos ensues. Yeah, I am not a person that reads scary books, and this had elements of like otherworldly, you know, underworld vibes. It was definitely quite eerie, not like scary by any means, but it definitely had like a spooky kind of vibe, I think. The writing was really good. It was also YA. There was like a tiny little smidge of romance that felt a little weird for me, and I think that's why my rating was a 4 instead of anything higher, because again, I really, really, really like this author's writing style and I'm very excited to read her other books. But anyways, yeah, 4 stars for me. I thought it was a solid fable fantasy. It kind of gives the vibes of like creepy, like fable-y storytelling, fairy tale vibes. yeah, more along those lines. The next book that I read was Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, and I rated this one 5 stars. I really had a good time reading this. I know there are very mixed feelings about this novel and Emily Henry in general, or like whatever. I think a lot of people were upset that it wasn't as romance heavy as her other novels, or felt like some of the parts were a little bit boring or slow or whatever. But I think personally that she did a really good job of building up to something that happened. Obviously, a couple of aspects were a little bit out of left field, a little bit, you know, kind of maybe pushed in there, but I think the way that she did it still had quite a big emotional impact. She could have done it like a tiny bit better, but I personally really enjoyed this book and definitely will be rereading it. I just really love Emily Henry's writing style. This book made me cry at the end. I thought that everything was so beautifully done, and yeah, it's one of those books that I definitely want to reread, because knowing what you know at the end, it colors the story a little bit in a different way, and there is like a little bit of a twist at the end that is like, I don't know if you necessarily see it coming 100%, but it kind of like makes things make a bit more sense. It kind of clicks some things into place, and it's not like totally far-fetched, but some people thought it was a little silly. I thought that it worked well with the story personally. But yeah, I rated that one 5 stars. It's essentially the story of this woman going to a really small island off of Georgia to interview. She's basically just like famous for being from a rich family, essentially, kind of like Paris Hilton. But it's the story of her, and essentially she brings in this journalist to tell her story after all these years, now that she's old, but also doesn't tell this young journalist that there's another journalist that she's also interviewing for the same role, and they kind of have to duke it out. They kind of get to know each other better because the island is so small, they keep running into each other. Yeah, it's cute and heartwarming. I enjoyed it a lot, so that's how I feel about it. Next book that I actually read this time for once. I read a nonfiction, Sorry I'm Late, I Didn't Want to Come by Jessica Pan. It's basically a story of this woman being like, yeah, I'm an introvert, but I want to see what I can do in 1 year to like really get myself out of my comfort zone. And I thought it was so funny. Like, it was so funny and so relatable. I ended up highlighting so many quotes in this book. She kind of just like goes through a bucket list of things where she's like, I want to throw a dinner party and go to a improv class and like do stand-up comedy and all this stuff. So she kind of like takes you through her year of like pushing herself out of her comfort zone and doing all these things and like what she learned from it. And the stories are so funny. Like, she just has a really witty writing style, and I would say if you like classify yourself as an introvert, this book is definitely worth a listen or a read. I had a really good time reading it. Again, I didn't rate it because I feel a little weird rating memoirs, but I highly recommend this one. The next book that I read was Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. For some reason, I just ended up listening to a lot of Taylor Jenkins Reid. I think her books definitely work better as audiobooks from my personal experience. Essentially, it follows this woman who is the daughter of a really famous singer, although he kind of like abandons his children. So it's basically about her and her younger siblings kind of like fighting their way up from essentially nothing, just kind of living a normal life, but knowing that they have a really famous father that's just like not in their life at all. And she becomes a model and like marries this famous tennis person. And the thing about these books is that I think they're kind of interconnected with the other ones where she's talking about like fake historical figures in her little thing. So like there's a reference to Carrie Soto, which is why I ended up listening to that one later on. And it's interesting. I think I rated it a 4.25 because I thought it was a good story and it was interesting to listen to. I don't know. The next book that I read was Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which is the 4th and final book in the Naturals series. I guess technically there's like a novella that comes afterwards, but I'm probably not gonna read it. And I rated this one 4 stars. It was really kind of cute way to tie up the end. There's one thing that happens at the very end of the book that is just like honestly so rude for no reason. Ugh, I can't say because I don't want to spoil anything, but like it was so unnecessary. And I was really upset about it. In general though, I thought that the way that the story arc went was super interesting. I would love to spend more time with these characters. They were just so sweet and precious, and I love YA like mystery thrillers. Honestly, I like them better than adult thrillers because adult thrillers can sometimes be a little bit too morbid for me, or honestly sometimes a little bit too boring or whatever. I think I personally prefer YA thriller and mystery a little bit more, not just because I'm a scaredy cat. I just think it's done really well, and it's also heartwarming and a little bit funny at the same time, which you don't usually get in adult thrillers. They take themselves a little bit too seriously, I think. So I kind of like the YA to like break up the vibe feeling of it. But yeah, again, I can't really say that much about this book because it's the 4th in a series, but I really enjoyed it. I think it's a cute series. If you like Criminal Minds, I highly recommend reading this series. And they're so easy to read, super, super fast to get through. Anyways, I ended up listening to Carrie Soto is Back, and I rated this one 4 stars. It was interesting, and I think listening to it made the rating 4 stars. If I had read it, I probably would have rated it 3 or 3.5. Because honestly, there was so much talk about tennis. Like, I understand that she's a tennis player, but like we were getting play-by-plays of the game. Like, as we were going through, it was literally like, and then she did a backhand and then a forehand and then she did a ground ball and a whatever. I am so glad that I was listening to it because it felt like I was just like listening to sports commentary or something. The whole thing kind of felt like a sports commentary documentary, whatever, that I was listening to. And again, this is why I say that her books tend to be better in audiobook format, and also there's like a full cast of characters. I read Daisy Jones and the Six, and I honestly did not like it that much. I think the show did a really good job of bringing that story to life, even though the ending was a little bit different in the book versus the show, but it didn't work for me as much. I think her books are meant to be enjoyed in audiobook format, in my personal opinion. But anyways, I rated this one 4 stars because the story was still really interesting. And yeah, the only thing that I felt kind of weird about in general, and like this is a thing that kind of niggles me a little bit about Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I don't know how many more of her books I'm gonna listen to or read because it kind of just puts a weird taste in my mouth. But like the main character in this book is Latina, and I'm like 99.9% sure that Taylor Jenkins Reid is white. So it feels a little odd for a white lady to be writing a non-white character, but I'm also just saying that as a white person. So I don't know. It's just something that made me feel a little odd. I'm like, you're kind of writing from an experience that is not your own, which is kind of weird. And she did that for Evelyn Hugo as well. The character is like a white passing Latina. So I don't know if maybe she's just a white passing Latina and I have no idea, but I don't know. It was a little odd. I know she has other opinions and views that I disagree with, so I think I'm kind of not gonna read any more of her books. It's not that big of a loss. Anyways, the next book that I read was actually a physical book, and it's over there and I don't feel like getting it right now. So sorry that I'm the worst. But it's called The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. I don't know what to rate this book. I really don't, because I haven't put a review in. I think I'm gonna settle on 4.25, at least for right now. You know how much my reviews fluctuate as time goes on and I think about them more. But I really enjoyed this one. The story spans like quite a long time. It starts from when she's a young child to essentially her death. And it follows this woman who works in the scriptorium, which is the building where they are collecting all of the slips and words for the Oxford English Dictionary. Her dad works there and she kind of just like grows up in this scriptorium and ends up working there. And it just tells this really wonderful story about the fact that so many words were kind of forgotten and left out of this dictionary because of the elitism, essentially, of academia, because she kind of goes on this journey to find words that are not in the dictionary, not on these slips. So if it's just a word that's spoken, colloquially or otherwise, and it doesn't have like a textual place to pull from, they don't include it in the dictionary. And she's like, there are so many words that are spoken by these women and these like working class people that are in like the service side of things, like butlers, that are just not included. And she's like, I kind of want to include those words because first of all, it's mostly sexist, and also it's super fucking elitist. So yeah, she kind of like goes on this journey of collecting all these words into a little like dictionary of her own, and it follows her life throughout the like women's suffrage movement and World War I, and kind of like shows where she's at throughout all of those things while still working on this dictionary, like the main Oxford dictionary, and then collecting her own words as well. If you like historical fiction based on a true story and want to learn a little bit more about the Oxford English Dictionary, I definitely suggest it. It's super interesting from like a linguistics point of view. Personally, I am a huge etymology kind of person. I think it's really interesting. So I would recommend it. It did make me cry. But I cried everything, so you don't necessarily have to take that as like a deterrent. I don't know. It's just a fact. I just cry a lot, so don't worry about it. The next book that I read was Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood, and I rated this one 4 stars. I thought it was fun. I think in the first 30% of the book, like a solid first 30%, I absolutely hated the main male character. I was like, why are you so mean? What is wrong with you? Why are you being such a jackass? I think part of the issue here was that apparently you're supposed to read Not in Love before this. Like, this is the second book, kind of like almost the spin-off of Rue and Eli's story from Not in Love. So you're getting Maya and Connor's story in this one, and there is quite a bit of an age gap, which is why it's called Problematic Summer Romance. It's set in Italy. It's like at Rue and Eli's wedding, so you kind of like see that they're still together and like everything works out happily ever after. It had like all the charm of an Ali Hazelwood book. However, yeah, the main male character, I kind of hated him for like almost half the book, and the problems and issues that he was going through made sense, but it's also like, okay, just go to therapy and it'll help a lot, I promise. It's the kind of thing where it's like therapy would have solved most of the issues in this book. Sometimes it's hard for me to like get over that, and I probably would have rated it higher if it were not for that fact. You know what I mean? But I still enjoyed it. I really just love Ali Hazelwood books, the way that she writes. I don't know why, just it gets me. I think it's mostly just the banter and like the comedy and stuff, and also, I don't know, the dynamic between the characters ends up being really fun for me usually. Whatever, it was like mostly a fun time. It did what it needed to do. The next book that I read was The Membranes by Ji Dao Wei. Wow. Wow. 5 stars. 5 stars. This is when things started really going up in general. It's just like such an interesting book. Honestly, have not read anything like this in a long time. It's just so good. Like, I minored in philosophy in college, and this book was just such a treat, especially since dystopian is like one of my favorite genres ever. And it says on the thing that it's like science fiction / speculative fiction. It's kind of like queer dystopian speculative fiction, I guess, is how I would describe it, because essentially you're following this person named Momo. It's in the future when the ozone hole has ripped all the way open and it's not safe to live on the surface of the earth anymore, so everyone's underwater. You get like little glimpses of like how society is, and all of those glimpses were so interesting, especially since this book was originally written in 1996 and it was recently translated to English. And I'm just so like, reading it now is so interesting, and it really made me think. It really just like hit all the right notes. It hit all the right chords. I don't really know how to describe it besides the fact that you should just read it because it's so freaking cool. It's really short. It's like less than 200 pages, and I absolutely tore through it. I'm really obsessed with that. I'm definitely gonna be reading it again at some point. 100% 5-star read. Definitely recommend. The next book that I read was Harlem Rap City by Victoria Christopher Murray. I think I'm gonna rate it 4 stars. I definitely really enjoyed it. I honestly kind of love historical fiction. I feel like I've been reading a lot of it recently, and it takes place in Harlem in the 1920s-ish, And the main character is Jessie Redmond Fawcett and W.E.B. Du Bois. And essentially, they had an affair. Now, I didn't know this. I didn't even know who Jessie Redmond Fawcett was, but she was the literary editor for The Crisis, which was the newspaper publication of the NAACP, which actually, it still exists today. I think mainly as a website, but it's like still running to this day. And W.E.B. Du Bois founded it and kind of like brought it up to be what it was. And it was really, really iconic, especially in like the Black community in the 1920s and beyond. So it kind of goes through a couple of major historical events that go on during this time and kind of just shows her impact on the literary community and mainly the Harlem Renaissance, the literary end of the Harlem Renaissance, because she essentially was like, people call her the midwife of the Harlem Renaissance because she kind of birthed all of these really iconic writers and poets and, you know, authors and all this stuff because she edited their work. She essentially like discovered Langston Hughes, which is crazy. Like Langston Hughes' early poetry is the way it is because she helped edit his work, which is so crazy. Anyways, this woman that is completely lost to history, you find out all about her life, her affair with W.E.B. Du Bois. I will say the reason why I didn't rate it any higher, and it probably would have been rated a lot higher for me, because I just love historical fiction, especially when it's set in New York. It's so interesting to me because the affair took up so much of the narrative. And it's funny because in the back of the book, the author was very much like, I felt really weird the fact that I had to include this affair, and I feel like I had to include it as much as I did because it was such a big part of her life, and it's like literally the reason why she got her job at The Crisis. And like weirdly enough, without this affair, like maybe we would never know who Langston Hughes is and like all these other people. And it's just really interesting. Like history is very messy and there's things that are not perfect about these like iconic people of our past. I had very mixed feelings about it, but I think I'm gonna land on 4 stars because the other parts of it were very interesting, and also finding out that W.E.B. Du Bois is like a total misogynist and like low-key super elitist was very interesting as well. Like finding out that such an iconic person in history is like not as good of a person as you think he is, even though he was so instrumental for moving forward Black people and like their rights and everything. So that was very interesting. Okay, nearly at the end of this wrap up. The next book that I read was You're the Problem, It's You by Emma R. Alban. This is the second book in the Mischief and Matchmaking duet, I guess. It's kind of just like a 2-book interconnected romance situation. I thought it was fine. It did what it needed to do. It was like a cute little time. Extremely predictable, both of them. Like so incredibly predictable. You could literally sense what was going to happen at the end from like 500 miles away. And like that didn't necessarily take away from the book. I don't know if this is just a me problem or if other people feel the same way, but it's such a contemporary romance vibe and written in third-person perspective. So it's third-person limited, so when you're in each person's perspective, you're like still saying their name and they are saying other people's names and like blah blah blah. The names started getting really jumbled up because there's like a humongous cast of characters that you're following. So the writing style was a bit clunky for me personally, but otherwise it was really cute. It was just a silly little fun time. I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars because again, it was good, it was fun, it was like did what it needed to do, but it wasn't like incredible, change your life amazing. You know what I mean? The second to last book that I read was Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth, and I absolutely loved this book. I really enjoyed this one a lot. I really did. It's a quite short book. Definitely gives similar vibes to Call Me By Your Name, just in the fact that it is so raw and so honest. Kind of just takes you through the absolute obsession / infatuation that occurs when you kind of like encounter your first love when you're a teenager. But then also there's all the extra stuff baked in of like they live in a conservative tiny town in Ireland, like 5.5 minutes away from the Northern Irish border in like the early 1990s. And like lots of things are going on. It doesn't really talk about the political unrest that is going on, maybe mentions it like one time, but it's about this girl who kind of is like wrestling with herself and what she wants versus what she's expected, and just the fear of like losing everything that she knows and loves to be with this girl that she loves, and like realizing that that's something that she wants. And I don't know, it's just, I found it really, really moving. And there are definitely parts of it that like are a little bit out there in terms of it's not like one of those cutesy little contemporary romance. It's definitely leaning more on the literary fiction side, and you're in her head the whole time. It's mostly no plot, just vibes, but you're totally in her head. It feels like a stream of consciousness, almost like a diary, where you're just listening to her thoughts about like every situation. You're kind of in the moment with her, but mostly hearing like what she's thinking about in each moment, and like the self-hatred that she's battling with. And I just thought it was so good. I gave this one 5 stars. I really enjoyed this a lot. I definitely will be rereading this. I would love to buy a physical copy of it as well. Anyways, last one. Technically, I finished the last 30 pages of this on July 1st, but I'm including it in the wrap up because I read pretty much 98% of the book in June, so I'm just gonna count it. And that was First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. This is just a cutesy little romance. I thought it was really sweet because it talked about all different kinds of love. I thought it was really sweet. It's the author's like take on Sleepless in Seattle, and apparently the next one is going to be kind of her take on When Harry Met Sally. So that's gonna be really exciting. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was super cute. The writing style is super fun and witty. The banter is really good. I was like literally laughing out loud and chuckling while reading the book. There's definitely parts of it that are super predictable, kind of cringy, like whatever. I think for romance, everyone's mileage is going to vary a lot, but I found this one really cute. I enjoyed it a lot. Definitely recommend if you're looking for a cutesy little romance that'll make you giggle and kick your feet. I think I'm gonna rate it 4.75 stars because it almost gave me the 5-star tingly feelings, but I'm like so particular about my 5 stars. It's actually kind of annoying. I probably could be a little bit nicer about a couple of these books, but whatever. I really enjoyed it a lot, and I'm scared because when I read too many good books in a row, that's what gets me into a worse reading slump. The reason why I was in this weird Slumpville marsh anyway was because I read the Hunger Games series again, and that absolutely destroyed me. And then I read Hellbent, which was also really good. Anyways, in general, I feel like I've had a really good past 2 months for reading. I have a lot of other books that I would really love to read before the end of the summer. I got a bunch from the library, which I'm really excited about. That's all. Thanks so much for watching. See you in the next one. Till then, I'm sending you all my love because we're all just trying our best out here. Okay. Bye, happy reading. Let me know any of your thoughts on any of these books in the comments. Okay, see you, bye.